A lab full of mosquitoes today on the world. I'm Marco Werman. Researchers in Brazil are working overtime to find a solution to the Zika crisis, and that means studying the principal culprits, mosquitoes.
In this room is around 10,000 to 15,000 mosquitoes.
Very buggy research. Also, a Nevada Latino tells me what he thinks of the two Latino Republicans running for president, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio.
The reality is that those two are candidates who have long forgotten what it means to be a Latino in this country and to struggle.
Plus, the British Conservatives doing battle over Europe, London Mayor Boris Johnson versus Prime Minister David Cameron.
If you were going to give this a score so far, it has to be 1-0 to Boris.
That's all today on The World. Glad you could be with us this Monday. I've got a few more Tehran stories to tell you, one coming later today. Two young Iranian women with a keen eye for design and skills aplenty on a lathe and bandsaw. But first, our Across Women's Lives team is in Brazil all this week. They'll be bringing us stories about women and the environment. You can follow along on social media using the hashtag #HerPlanet. Right now, the big story affecting women in Brazil is the Zika outbreak. That's because there's growing evidence the Zika virus can cause terrible birth defects. Many researchers are trying to figure out how Zika works, while others are hoping to stop mosquitoes from spreading the virus in the first place. Here's the world's Carolyn Beeler.
Professor Adriano Mondini is on a public health mission. He's collecting mosquitoes outside of a house in Araraquara, about a 3-hour drive northwest of Sao Paulo.
This patient was positive for dengue, so we're collecting the mosquitoes in her house to test them for dengue.
Mondini's student Paulo Lopez walks around with a little vacuum tube, trying to suck up mosquitoes where they like to lurk.
Wet places around the house and some dark places around the corner.
Mondini will test the mosquitoes that Lopez collects for dengue, but also for the Zika virus, as he started doing recently. The Brazilian government says somewhere between 400,000 and 1.5 million people may have been infected with Zika in less than a year. Most likely won't even notice any effects, but in a few cases, the consequences may be dire, from temporary paralysis to severe birth defects. That's why researchers here are on the hunt for both the virus and the mosquitoes that carry it.
If we find it here, it means that we have a mosquito population that can transmit Zika virus. And it's good because Dr. Capurro is going to work with that. I'm going to work with that.
Dr. Capurro is Dr. Margaret Capurro. To mix insect metaphors here, if Mondini is a worker bee in the fight against Zika-spreading mosquitoes, Capurro may just be the queen. She's coordinating the mosquito research of a new Zika network of around 40 labs in Brazil, including researchers like Mondini.
We are going to bring from the field different populations of mosquitoes to understand how is the dynamic of the interaction with the virus.
Capurro is a biologist at the University of Sao Paulo. She's been researching mosquitoes for nearly 30 years, and she was on her way to retirement when the Zika outbreak hit. Perhaps that idea still survives in her choice of footwear. She wears flip-flops. But she's thrown herself back into her work, using her connections to gather mosquitoes from around Brazil to study their genetic differences.
If we have mosquitoes that are susceptible and mosquitoes that are totally immune, the idea is to compare the genome between them to see which is the difference. Because if we have this information, we can have targets for insecticides or modify mosquitoes to block the transmission of the disease.
Using that information, one possible method to block the transmission of the disease would be to breed lots of these immune mosquitoes.
You can introduce this population in the places that they have mosquitoes with very bad infection.
Essentially, she would replace Zika-carrying mosquitoes with Zika-immune ones. She's done something similar with genetically modified sterile male mosquitoes in a pilot program to fight dengue. It's not yet clear if that kind of program could really scale up to an effective level. But still, she's charging ahead, starting in her breeding lab for the Aedes aegypti mosquitoes that carry Zika.
This is the insect room. Insectarium? Yeah, I don't know. In this room, we need to have a procedure to enter.
The room has a sort of airlock to trap